Can we talk for a second about SpaceX's Starship and Starbase, Texas? Because they're building the most massive launch tower at Starbase. It's going to be over 400 feet tall. It'll launch and catch starships on the Gulf of Mexico. It's going to be the wildest thing that's going to happen in the next some amount of time. We're not exactly sure yet, but let's go back in history if we can. Let's rewind a little bit in the journey to SpaceX's Starbase's first launch tower, the Mechazilla, if you will. It's a complex process. It was about 13 months from the beginning phases until they actually stacked the Starship on the launch tower. Then it took them a while to actually launch a Starship, but we're not going to talk about the actual launch. We're going to talk about how long it may take them to do Starship's Tower number 2 at Starbase. 13 months for the first one. The tower began mid 2020 ish, and significant process and milestones were achieved throughout 2021. So think about this. In the middle of the year, August ish, they started construction. First significant structures began to rise in 2020. So the base of the tower started being put together. The tower assembly, the structure of the launch tower, started taking shape in early of 2021. But by August, the major components, including the chopsticks, I was there for the delivery of the chopsticks, actually. I watched the chopsticks drive down the road right past me, and they're used for catching and stacking of rockets. And that's when they were installed, about August 2021. I believe it was August 2021 that they got all of the major components together. And then by January 2022, the tower was fully constructed and underwent various testing. It was integration of the launch arm or the catch arms, the lift arms, if you will, the chopsticks, and other systems which actually controlled the launch systems and the tower itself, including venting and lighting and the pneumatics to raise up the rocket when you put it on those arms. All of that was being built about early 22. The tower was fully constructed and underwent numerous tests for months. Integration of the towers, other systems, and they finally lifted a test fully stacked rocket in February of 2022, and I believe it was February 10th of 2022. I was there in Brownsville at Starbase when they did this first lift. I went down February 14th, and I got footage of it. February 10th, after they stacked it and they opened up the roads again, I got some footage of it. And then this was what we all thought was going to be the first test article that was going to launch from Starbase. Ship 20 and Booster 4. So 420 was going to be, in all rights, the first rocket to launch, but that wasn't the case. So they took it all down. It was a beautiful sight. I got to see it from numerous angles. I got really close to it. It was wonderful. And Elon did a talk from there too. Now, what we're going to talk about today is how much time it's going to take for them to complete Tower 2 as Starbase. So now that we have a backstory here, about 13 months from the initial groundwork around the first tower till the complete construction and stacking, around 13 months. We're already into Tower 2. All of the major components have been delivered of the core of the tower to Starbase. At least most of them, as far as we know, and there could be more because they haven't shown us exactly how tall this is going to be. And they also, Elon hinted that this is going to be more complex than the first one. So we actually don't know all of the components for this yet. We know a lot of them. We know there's going to be catch arms. We know there's going to be a pneumatic system to raise and lower it. We don't know what's going to be used as the actual kind of engine to push the rocket up and down. We're not exactly sure because there's more piping, more. It might be actually a very a much more simple process than Tower One, because Elon said his engineers came to him and said, "Hey, the Tower One, let's just kind of throw everything away and let's start over. We have this really great design. which we think will be better than Tower 1. So what they're doing is they're probably simplifying all of the parts. Elon has said this so many times. The best part is no part. And as an engineer myself, I'm a front end developer engineer. I know this is true. The less amount of code that I can use to get the job done, the better off the final product is. So that's exactly what they're doing here with Starbase's Tower 2. Now, a lot of us in the media here have thought that Starbase's catch tower, which was going to be Tower 2, we thought Tower 2 was going to be just catching and Tower 1 was going to be launching and stacking. But that's not the case. Elon has said Tower 2 will be for launching, catching, refurbishing, basically everything you need to do for the tower. As far as the tower goes. And then of course, well, it won't be refurbishing, but doing a little bit of labor to get it ready for launches. But if there needs to be a really like massive refurbishing, it can go back to the production facility right down the road, about a mile away. And Starbase is becoming a massive city almost. It's crazy. They're building new housing down there. Um, so the people that work there will have a place to live nearby because Brownsville, Texas, is actually about 30 minutes away, and you have to drive down this crazy long highway in the middle of nowhere with no facilities. There's no gas. There's no chargers for Teslas or anything along the way. It's just like 25 minutes of nothing. And then finally, at the very, very, very end of this road, literally at the Gulf of Mexico, you get to Starbase. So they're building this launch tower, the quick release. Everything's going to be completely different. And the engineers at SpaceX are literally the best in the business. So when they start stacking this, we're going to see pieces of this stacking on top of each other, of course, like a normal tower, but we'll see it simplified. And it's going to be a mega structure. It's going to be over 400 feet tall. The Starship itself is about 400 feet. So if they want to do Starship version 2, Starship version 3, it has to be a massive tower down there. So it could be 450, almost 500 feet tall by the end of the stack. I'm not sure. They haven't told us how high they're gonna stack this thing yet. I haven't heard anything from Elon or anybody at Starbase how tall they're gonna make this thing. I've seen drafts of this, blueprints that I've gotten behind the scenes. I can't show them to you, but somebody has shown me some items that I can't really talk about too much, but it looks massive. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. I wasn't even supposed to tell you that I got those blueprints, but we're gonna keep it in there because, um, yeah, it's a fun thing to know. But it could be massive. The second tower could be much bigger than the first tower, and we've had hints of that from Elon. He said, "Yeah, it's going to be bigger." But we don't know exactly how big it's going to be. Right? We can guess. All we can do right now is guess, because the components that they have now, stack those up, and we'll have pretty similar to what we have now, probably a little bit bigger. Um, and then they might add more components in the future. So who knows? I've had a comment on my last video of somebody that said um, they're not going to catch the booster until the next tower is done. Elon said the next booster will be caught at Starbase. So Tower 1, which you see over there, over that side, over there, that's Tower 1. They want to catch it for IFT5. And if that's the case, if they want to catch it for IFT5 and something goes wrong, it could be months before they rebuild it. And they're not going to be ready for IFT6, or Tower 2 isn't going to be ready for IFT6. It's going to take, if they do a similar strategy to the first one, which I think they're going to have a streamlined process. So I don't think it's going to take 13 months this time. It may, because it might be more complex, but simpler, if that makes sense. Like a much more complex structure, but with simpler hardware and simpler piping and electronics and stuff. So it could be just the build of the thing is simpler, but it could take preparation and could take months, almost a year to get this thing completed. So if they do catch it, if they go for it on IFT5, and Kathy Leaders has said, We're not sure yet, but then Elon came out on Twitter or on X, um, saying we're going to catch it on for IFT5. So it's all still up in the air. If they run the numbers and they think they can do it and it looks good during the flight, they'll probably do it for IFT5. Um, Also, Elon's the biggest hype man. So we all know that Elon is up in his head thinking, we can figure it out. Like, why can't we figure this out? And for him, that's how he thinks. He doesn't think in absolutes. He thinks of what happens if we don't do it. Well, then we failed. Why can't we do it? That's how he thinks. Like, why can't we? He never thinks like, oh, there's all these roadblocks in the way. He doesn't think like that. And that's why he's so successful. It's not about the roadblocks. It's not about the things that the engineers in typical engineers put up roadblocks for themselves. Like, well, these systems work, so we can't go around these systems and build something new. We can't innovate because our systems work. Why do you think ULA and Blue Origin are so mad at SpaceX? Because that's how they think. They're boring. They think like strict guidelines. They have strict guidelines. SpaceX, Elon especially, goes, what are these strict guidelines? Okay, engineering guidelines definitely have a purpose. If you don't have these strict guidelines, then things go wrong. But if those strict guidelines get in the way of progress, get rid of those guidelines. Throw them out the window and move forward. So this next tower, the engineers were like, we're throwing all this stuff out of the window that we did for IFT or for the Tower 1, and we're going to build our dream tower. We're going to build an engineering marvel that's going to put us so far ahead of ULA, Blue Origin, basically the only other heavy lift rockets out there, that nobody can compete for a very long time. Modern marvel. That's what this thing is. It's going to be a modern marvel. It's going to be an engineering feat that no one's seen before. The SLS tower, massive. And you know what's cool about the SLS tower too? It moves the whole rocket. Like it moves it incredibly slow. The crawler moves a giant 300 some odd foot tall rocket from the production facility, from the high bay, all the way to the launch site. SpaceX doesn't do that. They take the booster and the ship separately. They raise them up with the arms. They stack them on top of each other, and then they're ready. Of course, there's things in between. Like they're not just ready. They have to, do some testing or whatever. But they don't drive it down the road all put together, which is a smart thing to do. You don't need a massive tower. Plus, they only have the little road. They have like a 2-lane road to get down. And they're like, how do we do this? And their rocket is as big as a road, is a 2-lane road. It's like 30 feet wide. The thing is massive. So they couldn't do that. There were constraints for them to build here. So they had to build what, basically like a barge, like a land barge, basically, to move this thing down. Or they hired one, or they rent one or whatever. So, and then they finally have their own. So the funny thing about this next tower is that we don't really know what it's going to look like. We know one thing. Elon has said this. The arms are going to be a little bit smaller. They're going to be just big enough for the rocket, or the booster, I should say, or the rocket too, to be caught on. So the rapid reusability of the booster and the rocket itself, the Starship, we may start to see that happen really soon. And the reason why we need this is because SpaceX wants to go to Mars eventually, but the first step is to get to the moon. Artemis 3, they'll be sending people to the moon. SpaceX needs to refuel Starship numerous times. And the only way they can do that is to catch the boosters, refurbish them, send up another Starship. They could have a fleet of 50 boosters in 50 Starships or whatever, or 20 Starships or whatever, it depends on the ratio there. But could they just have 4 boosters that work really well? It just continuously launch, land, launch, land, launch, land. and send up 10 starships to the refueling station. That's a possibility. All they have to do is stack them up. It would take, especially for the Artemis program, it would take them about a week to do all the launches. I think 7 days to a week or something, somewhere around 7 days. I think the calculations were that SpaceX could possibly get all of the boosters and all of the Starship fueling starships into orbit, the tankers. And also, they need the tankers. They need to test the tankers at Starbase before they launch them from KSC. So we're probably not going to see the tower at Kennedy Space Center be built until after Tower 2 at Starbase is completely finished and tested rigorously with different variations of starships, because they need to know that it works. They could probably start it and realize that the design works really well, and then they can build it over at Kennedy Space Center. They'll go through all the testing, make sure everything is great, and then they'll start building over at Kennedy Space Center. But I'm guessing Tower 2, Tower 1 was 13 months until full stack, around 13 months from 2020, like mid 2020 to February 2022. That's a long time. So somebody said they're not going to catch the booster until Tower 2. Yeah, if you want to wait a year, IFT6. No, they're not going to wait a year for IFT6, but there will only be a few launch attempts left in this year at Starbase. So there's a possibility they continue to launch from Starbase in the beginning of next year. They also continue to build the Tower 2. They'll refine Tower 1 because they're going to need both towers. They're going to need both towers to continue testing. So one of them will probably primarily be for catching. Tower 2, I think, is going to be more of a catch tower, or more something that they can catch with, because that's going to be their final design. Tower 1, they could probably catch with that too. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not. So that's where I differ from a lot of YouTubers out there, is that, like, I'm not 100% sure about this stuff. And people that say that they're sure about this stuff are full of crap. Like, they have some data, right? But, like, we know everybody that's been right. Eric Berger is like the only dude you can trust 100%. Think about Eric. So what I do with my timelines is, like, what does Elon say? And then what does Eric say? And then it's somewhere near what Eric says is when things actually happen. Elon is very, he's a hype man, and he wants stuff done as fast as possible. His timelines are ridiculous. Like, if everybody worked as hard as Elon, it would be done by now. But then you get Eric Berger in the process, and he knows engineering. He knows what's up. So I kind of look at both of those numbers. Elon says it'll fly in 4 weeks. Eric says 8 weeks. Probably 7 weeks. Somewhere around there. So the second tower will probably be done in a year, somewhere around there. Just because the first one, unless it's massively more complex, or they run into something with building these things out, fabricating something, it could take longer. But somewhere in a year before the actual tower is completely constructed. So next year, like mid next year, maybe first 4 months of next year would be a good estimate for this. So let me know in the comments down below. And thank you for watching this. I really do appreciate you. And please take a second, of course, because I'm a YouTuber, I have to ask for this. It helps me with the algorithm. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the comment button, leave a comment. And if you don't have anything to really contribute, or if you just feel like, hey, I just want to listen and watch, just leave a rocket emoji down below. But I want to know what everybody else thinks. Like, when will the tower actually be built? Let me know in the comments down below what you think. And give me a reason if you have one, because I know there's information out there, and the information I've sifted through, most of it is like, it's there. The information's out there, but there's not a lot of, like, complete information out there. But I can tell you what, the design I saw of the tower, and it was, as far as I know, was an official design. It looks incredible. And it looks like there could be, let's just say, more. than meets the eye. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. So thank you for watching, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe if you can, because it's free. Takes a second. And not only will you get this channel, but you will be fed through the algorithm other spaceflight channels that you'd be interested in on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're listening on right now. So please take a second, hit the subscribe or follow button. And if you don't know we have an audio podcast, check out SpaceX News Pod on any podcast player that you listen on. Because if you're not on YouTube and you just want to listen, there you go. It's the podcast. All these are released on the podcast too. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other. And please hit that like button with maximum dynamic pressure. I'll see you next time.